by Sri Lanka's best internet package for online learning and online working with many amazing offers. Call 1212 for more information. Sri Lanka Telecom.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Much maligned. Former Inspector General of Police tells of his strife under President Maithripala Sirisena at the Easter Attacks Presidential Commission. More obstacles. The number of anti-20A petitions climbed to 18 with 29th fixed for consideration. Frivolous conduct. Russian flight crew had flouted COVID-19 health protocols. New faces, new ties. 8 new diplomats get the nod off the Committee of High Posts of the Parliament. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Friday, the 25th of September, 2020.
Nava sunlight sakura. Then dikukal pavathina sakura mal suwandin.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanayaka. Now let's start you off with your local stories. Former IGP Pujit Jayasundara pointed to an anomaly in the telephone records dating back to pre-Easter attacks, saying that surprisingly his records are absent. He told the Presidential Commission probing the attacks that former President Maithripala Sirisena's brother was in charge of telecom at the time. The Commission also heard a first-hand account from the former IGP on how former President Sirisena attempted to make him the scapegoat after the attacks. Meanwhile, former State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena told the Commission that the former President also asked the IGP to stop any open investigations on Islamic extremism. Former Inspector General of Police Pujit Jayasundara gave evidence before the Presidential Commission probing the Easter Sunday terror attacks for a third day yesterday. During the proceedings, the Commission asked the former IGP as to why he did not inform then State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena of the intelligence information pertaining to the attacks. The witness said, quote, "There was no point in informing. He wasn't active. He was only given 2 or 3 institutions, including training. Besides, with the prevalent political issues, I didn't attempt to inform him," unquote. The chairman of the commission then asked the witness as to why he did not inform the Catholic Church or the Cardinal. The former IGP responded, quote, "There wasn't enough certainty to that piece of information to inform the Cardinal. Had there been any certainty, I would have informed the Cardinal," unquote. The chairman of the commission put to the witness that if it was the case, why wasn't the Cardinal informed after receiving information on the 20th of April saying there will be an attack the next day? Former IGP Pujit Jayasundara's response was, quote, "It was around 5 p.m. when Nilantha Jayawardena informed me of this via telephone. It lasted 2 minutes and 13 seconds. He said that there was another piece of information on the previously received one. I asked him whether it was the foreign intelligence. When Nilantha responded yes, I asked him, didn't you find any information? He said nothing was found. So, what the State Intelligence Service has done is only passing on someone else's piece of information. They had not found any information of their own. Though that was the case, then not a single record of my phone calls made to officers to inform them of this matter was there when I went to make a statement. The telephone records of every other person pertaining to forewarnings, however, were there. It was Maithripala Sirisena's brother who was at the telecom back then. When I made phone calls back then, I could hear a click indicating that it's being tracked. Another thing is that back then, the State Intelligence Service had deployed informants in front of my official residence to surveil the IGP. Those are the things that happened to me," unquote. The chairman of the commission asked the witness at whom he points the finger at over these things. The former IGP said, quote, "I point the finger at Maithripala Sirisena and the relevant political authority. As the IGP, I have suffered heavily owing to such incidents. I'm not a person who should suffer like that. Ultimately, Hemasiri and I were sacrificed," unquote. The commission then asked the witness as to whether he is aware of a reason for Maithripala Sirisena to do this to them. Former IGP Pujit Jayasundar's response was, quote, "I know what was said about me. He was insistent that I be removed. I was even shouted at in front of officers at the Paget Road residence," unquote. The former IGP was then inquired whether the former president told him that he would be given an ambassadorial role if he was to take responsibility for the attack and resign. The witness responded, quote, "Yes. He called me after the attack on the 23rd of April and asked me to meet with him at Paget Road at 8 p.m, so I went in the night. I went and waited for about 20 minutes since, as I recall, the president was in talks with Tilanga Sumatipala, Mahinda Amaraveera and Lasantha Alagewanna. After that, I was asked to come in. He told me, 'Pujit, I asked you to come to speak of an important matter. I cannot take the responsibility for what happened. This was not communicated to me by Pujit or Hemasiri, so I cannot take responsibility for it.' So I kept looking at him. Then he said, 'Pujit, you must take the responsibility for this. I even asked during the Security Council this morning, did you even utter a word?' That's how he spoke. I kept silent, thinking that I should maintain discipline since I was the IGP. Then he said, 'The Vijit Malalgoda committee will convene after I appoint it. You will be for sure made culpable by it. But if you accept responsibility for this and resign, you will be given an ambassadorship in any country. I will alter the inquiry.' This he told me 3 times. On the 3rd occasion, I said that if I do as he asks, it will be betraying the entire police department. Besides, officers took measures pertaining to this. As such, I asked him not to say such. Then he asked in a loud voice as to what he is supposed to do. Then he stopped saying, 'That's all I have to say.' Then I paid my respects and left. Then I was called again on the 25th of April, saying that letter didn't arrive. Afterwards, President's Secretary Uday R. Senivratna was sent to meet with me. He told me to listen to him and go meet with the President and do what's asked of me. But I did not go," unquote. What's more, former IGP Pujit Jayasundara also made a startling remark. He said, quote, "Let me tell you something I came to know later about the Dehiwala bomber Jamil. He had come to the Tropical Inn from the Taj and left the bombs there. Then he had met someone at around 1:45 p.m. He had met with an officer from the State Intelligence Service. This meeting had taken place somewhere else. So if an intelligence officer had such contacts with Jamil, intelligence units could not have not known about Zahran. If appropriate individuals are convened and investigated, the links with the likes of Zahran will be revealed." What's more, Zahran had said that there is no issue with former Eastern Governor Hizbullah receiving foreign funds. It was because of politics that the likes of Zahran could not be arrested in the East. They were given governorships. The CID have a considerable amount of investigations to be conducted on this. With that being the case, they arrested Hemasiri and me over murder charges without any checks. That's what happened," unquote. Next up, it was the turn of former State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena, who was in office at the time of the attacks, to give evidence before the Presidential Commission. The chairman of the commission asked the witness whether the former president instructed the IGP to refrain from conducting open investigations on Islamic extremism during a meeting of the National Security Council attended by him. Wijewardena responded, quote, "Yes, President Maithripala Sirisena had told that to then IGP Pujit Jayasundara. Those matters were given to Nilantha Jayawardena," unquote. The commission then asked the former State Minister of Defence whether the President appointed him as the acting Minister of Defence when the President went overseas. The witness said, quote, "Only once before the Easter attacks was I appointed the acting Minister of Defence when he went overseas. In the other 2 or 3 occasions I was made the acting Minister of Defence. It was done after the Easter attacks. Even then, I wasn't informed before leaving the country. It was only after a couple of days that I was informed via fax. By the time the relevant credentials are received, he's already back in the country," unquote. The chairman of the commission then put to the witness whether he accepts the statement of many witnesses before the commission that former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe left the Security Council midway on many occasions when he attended it. Former State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena responded saying that he accepts the PM left the council on many occasions. He added, quote, "Though the Prime Minister has the power to summon the Triforces in the President's absence, the President had instructed the Triforces commanders to refrain from meeting with the PM if they are summoned in his absence," unquote.
Enjoy a very smooth shave with the Bic Easy 2 razor. Bic Easy 2.
Moving on with other local stories, a special judge bench consisting of Supreme Court justices has been appointed to consider the petitions filed against the draft bill of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. 6 more petitions were filed against the amendment today. Now, the judge bench, chaired by Chief Justice Jayantha Jayasuriya, consists of 4 other Supreme Court justices: Buwanika Aluwihare, Jayantha Jayawardena, Vijit Malalgoda and Cicero D. Arbru. The petitions will be taken up for consideration on the 29th of September. 18 petitions in total have been put forward against the 20th Amendment so far, with the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, leader of the Tamil National Alliance, R. Sambandhan, Anil Karyavasam, public interest litigation activist, Nagananda Kodituakku, and Executive Director of Centre for Policy Alternatives, Dr. Pakiyasothi Savaranmuthu, being among them. The Attorney General has been cited as the respondent of the petitions. The petitioners claim that certain provisions of the proposed draft bill of the 20th Amendment severely violate the country's constitution. They call for a 2/3 majority of the Parliament and a referendum to pass the draft bill. The draft bill of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was tabled in Parliament on the 22nd of September amidst opposition protests. Minister of Justice Ali Sabri today stated in Parliament that the present government will in no way interfere in the affairs of the country's judiciary, as done by the previous government. He made this statement responding to a question raised by Samagi Jana Balawegaya MP Chandima Vijayasiri regarding allegations of Dr. Shafi Shahabdeen performing illegal sterilisation surgeries.
මේ සුළු කාරණයක් අහන්නේ මේකට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා ඉන්න නීතිඥවරුන්ගේ නම් ටික විතරයි. සිංහල බෞද්ධ ජනතාව තුළ තිබුණු මහා විරෝධයක් තමයි මේ ශාෆි ශාහබ්දීන් කියන වෛද්‍යවරයා කරපු මහා විනාශය. අධිකරණ අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් බැහැරවිලා අපිට කියන්න මේ තොරතුරු අහන්න තියෙන අමාත්‍යාංශයේ තමුන්නාන්සලා ගැසට් කරලා තියෙන්නේ කොහෙද?
ලංකාවේ මේ වන විට නඩු 7,95,000ක් තියෙනවා. ඒ නඩු වල පැනී සිටින නීතිඥවරුන්ගේ නම් ලබා දීමේ හැකියාවක් අධිකරණ අමාත්‍යාංශයට නැහැ. එතුමාට ඒක අවශ්‍ය නම් එතුමාට එය මුදල් ගෙවලා සහතික පිටපතක් ලබා ගන්නට ඕන. අධිකරණ අමාත්‍යාංශය අධිකරණයේ තියෙන නඩු වලට සම්බන්ධ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. කාටවත් කෝල් දෙන්නේ නැහැ ගියා ආණ්ඩුවේ වගේ. මිනිස්සු තෝරගෙන උසාවි හදන්නෙත් නැහැ. අධිකරණයේ පවතින නඩුවක් ගැන අහන්නේ.
මට ඒ චෝදනා කරන්න එපා.
මම කොහොමද ඒ සඳහා පිළිතුරු ලබා දෙන්නේ?
බලාපොරොත්තු හොඳ බුද්ධිමත් ජනාධිපති නීතිඥයෙක් හැටියට එයාලට දඩුවම් දේවි කියලා. අපි බලමුකෝ මේ ටයිකෝඩ් දාගෙන අපේ ගරු ඇමතුමා ඒ ආණ්ඩුවටත් මේ ආණ්ඩුවට සලකන හැටි 20 ආවට පස්සේ.
දාන්න බැරිද ඔබතුමා වගේ අඳින්න ඕනද මම? ඔබතුමාගේ අවසරය අරගෙන ඔබතුමා විදිහට අඳින්න ඕනද? මට අවශ්‍ය දේ මම අඳිනවා. ඔබතුමා කියන්න ඕනේ නැහැ මට අඳින්න ඕන දේ. මම අඳින්නේ අධිකරණයට අවශ්‍යයට. ජාතිවාදී අවසන් දෙපා මෙතන. කම් බොරුවට. ප්‍රශ්නේ මොකද තේරුම? අධිකරණයේ පාදන නඩු පිළිබඳව අපෙන් ප්‍රශ්න අහන්නේ. ඔබතුමාට ජාතිවාදී අවසන් අවශ්‍යලා දෙන්නේ. කතා කරන්නේ කොහොමද? සාජීවනයේ පිළිබඳව.
මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙකුට තියෙන අයිතියක් තමයි ප්‍රශ්න අහන එක. මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු ඉතිහාසයේ හාහපුරා කියලා මුලින්ම පාපු මේ ඇමතිවරයෙක් අද මේ කෝප වෙලා බොහොම ආවේගශීලීව මේ වියත්මකද මේ වියත්මකද මේගොල්ලන්ට කරුණා කරලා මූලික පුහුණුවද යවන්න මොන්ටිසෝරියට.
පහුගිය කාලෙම මේ කට්ටිය මුනිවතරක් කළා සාෆි ශාහබ්දීන්ගේ සිද්ධිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් දැන් ඇවිල්ලා නීතිඥයෝ කවුද කියලා අහනවා.
අපේ කුන්නේ දිස්ත්‍රික් පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීතුමා කිව්වා මේ වියත්මගෙන් ඇවිල්ලා හැසිරෙන්න දන්නේ නැහැ, කතා කරන්න දන්නේ නැහැ, ආවේගශීලී කියලා. මං හිතේ ප්‍රධාන දේ තමයි මේ අපේ ප්‍රශ්නේ අහපු මන්ත්‍රීතුමා මෙතුමාගේ මේ ටයි කෝට්ටයක් ගැන කතා කරලා මේ අනවශ්‍ය ප්‍රශ්නයක් අදගත්ත එක. ඒ නිසා තමුන්නාන්සේලා ඔක්කොම ඉස්සෙල්ලා වැදගත් වෙන්න.
අපේ සම්ප්‍රදායක් තියෙනවා මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ යම්කිසි විදියකට ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇහුවාම එහෙම කෑකෝ ගහලා සැර කරලා එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ.
එහෙම අදහසකින් මම කිව්වේ නැහැ. මගේ ඇඳුම පිළිබඳව කතා කරපු දේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තමයි මම පිළිතුරක් ලබා දුන්නේ. නමුත් ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් එතුමාට යම්කිසි අපහසුතාවයක් වත් වුණා නම් මම සමාව දෙනවා. මට ඒක ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෙවෙයි. මගේ හැටි.
We will see you shortly after this break. Bear with us.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the Russian flight attendant who was initially diagnosed with COVID-19 yesterday was cleared of the virus today following 2 more PCR tests. Health officials, however, accused the Russian crew members of breaching due health protocols while calling for an investigation to identify those behind the incident. Meanwhile, with the detection of 12 more imported cases, the total number of COVID-19 infections in Sri Lanka stands at 3,345. That places the number of active cases in the country at 174.
One of the 15 crew members of a Russian-based airline who arrived in Sri Lanka on the 13th tested positive for COVID-19 yesterday. The group, who had chosen a hotel in Pulhena Matara for their stay, underwent their second PCR test at a private hospital before leaving the country. The person identified as COVID-19 positive was then admitted to the Hambantota General Hospital yesterday. Upon his third PCR test conducted by the Hambantota Hospital, the Russian national was declared negative for the virus. However, the officials decided to perform another PCR test on the Russian flight attendant for further confirmation in order to determine his diagnosis. That PCR test too came out COVID-19 negative. Meanwhile, it is reported that the rest of the 14 Russian nationals flew out to Russia last night via the Matala Rajapaksa International Airport. In new developments, the health officials accused the hotel which accommodated the 15-member Russian airline crew of not following due health protocols stipulated by the government.
We have encountered one airline crew member being positive in one of the quarantine center in Matara. That is a hotel. People are inhabiting there until they return back to their country. But we have identified that there are some breach of the quarantine practices in this quarantine center. For example, some of the people under quarantine came out of the hotel, as well as the people that working in the hotel has been to their homes during this period. That should not have happened. That all the people that are working in the hotel should be under quarantine at least for 14 days after they exposed to all these foreigners. As soon as that we identified this thing, we have taken measures to identify all the contacts of these people and also to quarantine these people, and that we are doing now. In addition to that, this COVID-19 patient that subsequent samples has come as negative. That is a good news. That means that his infectivity is very low level. So because of that, the threat to spread it into the or leak into the community is very much less. But we are taking all the preventive measures. In addition to that, we will be doing PCR testing these people.
The Government Medical Officers Association today called for an investigation into such irresponsible behaviour at a time when the entire world is faced with a pandemic.
සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ලියාපදිංචි වෙච්ච අනුමැතිය සහිත නියාමනයට යටත් වෙන නිරෝධායන මධ්‍යස්ථාන තියෙන රට පුරා. එහෙම තියෙද්දි සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයේ නියාමනයට යටත් නොවන නිරෝධායන මධ්‍යස්ථානයකට එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙනත් හෝටලයකට මේ අය යොමු කළේ කවුද? අඩුම ගානේ මත්තල ගුවන්තොටුපළේ ඉන්න නිරෝධායන භාරයේ ඉන්න වෛද්‍ය නිලධාරීවරයවත් දන්නේ නැහැ. මේ කියන්නේ ඒ අයටවත් නොකිය තමයි මේ පිරිස ගුවන්තොටුපළෙන් පිට කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒතර දවස් 14ක් අනිවාර්යයේ හෝටලය තුල නිරෝධායනයේ විය යුතු ආයතනය තුල නිරෝධායන යුතු පිරිස කොහොමද ත්‍රී විල් අරගෙන සුපර් මාකට් වලට ගියේ? කොහොමද මාතර නගරය පුරා සැරිසැරුවේ? පූර්ණ විමර්ශනයක් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් කළා කොහෙද අපිට වැරදුනේ කියන එක හොයන්න කියලා අපි විශේෂයෙන් මිලන සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශ.
The Galle Magistrates Court today further remanded the underworld figure Janit Madhushankar alias Podilesi until the 9th of October. The suspect was produced before court with regards to the death threats that were alleged to have been levelled at the Busa prison against the President, the Defence Secretary and other high-ranking officers of the Department of Prisons.
The underworld figure, identified as Janit Madhushankar alias Podilesi, was produced before the Galle Magistrate this morning. Deputy Solicitor General Dileep Piris told the court that the Criminal Investigation Department had recorded statements from the suspect on the 18th of this month with regard to the death threats that were levelled at the Busa prison against the President, the Defence Secretary and other high-ranking officers of the prisons department. He then went on to say that the suspect, Podilesi, had told the CID that he and Kosgoda Tharaka did not make any such threats. The Deputy Solicitor General said that Kosgoda Tharaka had told the CID that a commissioner of the Department of Prisons who maintained ties with Markandre Madhush made death threats against him. Accordingly, Deputy Solicitor General Dileep Piris went on to say that if these statements are found to be true, the necessary actions will be taken in this regard. However, the Deputy Solicitor General revealed to court that 30 firearms belonging to Kosgoda Tharaka have been found. He added that Podilesi had been involved in drug trafficking in the area of Galle with the involvement of police officers of the Police Narcotics Bureau who are currently facing charges in a drug trafficking case that is pending before the Colombo Magistrates Court. He further stated that Podilesi had assisted the underworld figure identified as Udara Sampath to smuggle drugs into the country from overseas. Accordingly, the Deputy Solicitor General said that the Attorney General hopes to file indictments against Kosgoda Tharaka and Podilesi in the future. Meanwhile, during the proceedings, the magistrate denied the request made by Janit Madhushankar, alias Podilesi, to make a statement. Deputy Solicitor General Dileep Piris then requested the court to grant permission to obtain statements from Markandre Madhush and the relevant Commissioner of Prisons for further investigations into the statement made by Kosgoda Tharaka. The Chief Magistrate of Galle then granted permission to record statements and ordered that the suspect, Podilesi, be further remanded until the 9th of October. Meanwhile, two youths who were fishing at the Egodamulla beach in Ahungalla last evening found a parcel of heroin floating in the sea. After the duo handed the parcel over to the Ahungala police, the police said that the parcel contained half a kilogram of heroin. The police also stated that the parcel will be handed over to the Government Analysis Department for further investigation. In the meantime, the Kiribati police arrested a suspect from the area of Pamunuvilla in Kalaniya who was in possession of 213 grams of heroin. The police also uncovered 6 mobile phones and a stock of bank passbooks and ATM cards from the possession of the suspect. Elsewhere, a close associate of Ami Nilantha, identified as Jagat Roshantha, was arrested by the Minuwangoda police in the area of Minuwangoda yesterday. The police discovered a 12-bore firearm buried in the kitchen of the suspect's house.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has directed officials to treat all verbal orders issued for the common good of the people as circulars to be implemented. He says that those who neglect this will face stern action. The head of state gave these directives at the discussion with Villagers Forum, which commenced today at the village of Velangvita in Haldumulo, Badulla.
The series of programs themed Discussion with Villagers commenced under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Velanvita village in Badulla today.
නැහැ කිව්වා. හැබැයි බලපත්‍ර ඉල්ලනවා නම් දීමේ නොහැ කියාවක් නැහැ කිව්වා. ඔව් මහත්තයා. අපි වතුරු බොන ජොක්ක බව අදනවා ටිකක් එහෙම අදනවා. නෑ මහත්තයා. ඉස්සර එකක් තිබුණා. ඒක දැන් නිකුත් වුණා රසය අලුත් කරගෙන. අලුත් කරන්න ගොඩක් මුදලක් යනවා ඒකට. අපේ දැන් ගොඩක් මුදලක් කියලා කිව්වට කැණින් බලපත්‍ර ගාස්තු රුපියල් 10000ක් තරම්වත් නැහැ.
Now, the Committee of High Posts of the Parliament has approved the appointment of 8 new diplomats, including Sri Lanka's new permanent representative to the United Nations and envoys to the United States, China, India and Japan. The committee meeting was held today and it was chaired by Speaker Mahindya Abebewardena with participation of Secretary General of Parliament Dhammika Dasanayake. Now, the nominations for the appointment of the new ambassadors and high commissioners had been referred to the Committee on High Posts for its approval. Accordingly, C.A. Chandraprema is the permanent representative of Sri Lanka to the United Nations in Geneva, while S. Amarasekara will be the High Commissioner to South Africa. Retired Admiral KKVP Harishchandra De Silva will take office as the ambassador to Afghanistan, and Vishramal Sanjeev Gunasekara will be Sri Lanka's ambassador to Japan. Milinda Moragoda, meanwhile, is the new High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India, while former Foreign Secretary Ravinath Arisinghe is the new ambassador to the United States of America. Professor Shanika Hiriburegama was approved as the ambassador of Sri Lanka to France, and Dr. Palitha Kohana will be Sri Lanka's new ambassador to China. Now, Sri Lanka's stocks closed 0.68% higher today as a result of price gains in a number of counters. The all-share price index closed 63.30 points up at 5,874.50. The more liquid S&P SL20 index closed 0.23% up at 2,487.66, with the market recording a turnover of 453.9 million rupees. Now, here's a brief report on today's market performance.
During the week, the ASPI gained 2.4%, mainly due to price gains in counters such as Cars and Cumberbatch, Bukit Dara and HNB Finance. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 decreased by 1.2%. The average daily turnover for the week was down from last week to 2.7 billion rupees. Capital goods sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week, while the second highest was seen in the bank sector. Furthermore, the foreign participation remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers, where foreign selling accounted for 18% of the total weekly turnover. A net foreign outflow of 1.5 billion rupees was recorded for the week. This resulted in the year-to-date net foreign outflow increasing to 38.5 billion rupees. Out of the weekly turnover, crossings accounted for 13%, which was a lower proportion than last week.
Now in the currency market, the rupee ended steady at 185 rupees and 25 to 35 against the US dollar today. However, the rupee closed at 185 rupees and 20 to 30 cents to the greenback yesterday. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.